to this episode of Coming Home with John Allen. I'm your humble host, John Allen. And before we get started with today's conversation, remember, go to my website, johnallenpod.com. That's JOHNALANPOD.com. That's where you can find all of the work that I do. Thank you so much for doing that. And here we are with Kyle Rogers. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. I'm kind of in the middle of my work day and you're at the end of yours, but you're living on site.
That is true.
Not everybody does that. I was watching on YouTube. There's some guy, I cannot remember his name. Maybe I'll find it and I'll link it up in this episode, a link to it. But he's got a YouTube channel. He lives in the Antarctic at some sort of research station. Now that is living on site.
No thanks.
But that's not quite your situation. You're up in Molde in Norway. Yeah. You're another American in Norway. What's your job up there? What are you doing?
So right now you're sitting in my office where I am the site manager for this broodstock farm, which means that we raise the mamas and papas of the coming generations of halibut in Nordic Halibut is the name of the company. Yeah. Newly installed, just took over at the beginning of the month. So this whole past month has been inundating in every way. I've been literally living and breathing and sleeping it for a month straight now. So I'm ready for that particular part of it maybe to be over. But that's what we do here. We make halibut eggs and halibut milk, and we combine them in order to make halibut babies. That's the job.
That is quite an interesting job. You know, people see fish in the grocery store, and I don't think very much thought goes into that process of how it gets there.
That's very true. I have to agree.
Yeah, and there's two ways that they do it here in Norway. You have the traditional Norwegian fishermen out there on a boat, out there in the middle of the ocean, or sometimes close into the coast with all of those risks, that old school life, catching fish, bringing them into market. You guys are a commercial gig.
Correct.
What exactly is your job there?
Right. So being a site manager, or as they call it, the leader of functionality, a driftleder, right? So the person who ensures that functionality is maintained. Just a lot of all that basic admin stuff that goes into, billing, scheduling, those kind of things, of course. But if we could maybe hammer it down, my job day to day is to make sure that the people who feed and care for the fish and their environment can and do have the tools that they need in order to do the job properly, as well as ensuring all the right training is in place. We've got coursework that everybody goes through for, say, chemical handling, because we handle some dangerous stuff, and then we've got animal welfare training and stuff. So I make sure that all that stuff is prepared, as well as your management. So there's motivation and leadership that all gets baked into that. So it's what anyone else would expect in a management position for the most part. It's just that what I manage is both people and fish, you could say.
Let's back up even further. How did you get that job? Again, that is quite an interesting job. Not a lot of people have that job, and then. No. To be an American, relatively new in Norway, to have that kind of job is quite unique and interesting. What's the story there?
So I can boil it down, give you a condensed taster so you can pick out of the platter what you like and dig in maybe, because it's a long story, as they all are, right? I've been in the country for 15 years now this month, and of course, there's a whole long thing about all of what's happened over those 15 years and the reason I came to Norway in the first place.
Well, first of all, let me jump in and apologize. I thought you were much newer, so to speak, in Norway, but 15 years is quite some time. Yeah. Okay.
No, I've been here. So I'll be 36 in a month, and I've been here for 15 years. So I've been here essentially my entire adult life. This is where I came into my own as an adult, was in Norway, actually. So
wow. No, that's even more interesting. How did you get here? What's the story that brought you here? You see, I got mine too.
But not this time. I got mine.
Oh,
this is the wrong ring. This is the wrong ring. This is number 2.
I see.
The correct one, we should say.
The best one.
I was imported. Yes. So I was imported from Seoul in South Korea, actually. My ex-wife and I played Warcraft together on an American server. So she was in Trondheim, I was in Seoul, and we played together on a Midwest server in the US. If anybody understands what that means, it's basically that we are playing a game together online with people whose local time is Central US, but she's in Norway and I'm in Korea. Super unusual circumstances. And then it just kind of snowballs from there, like things tend to do. And ended up putting a ring on it, as they say. We had our 2 daughters, got an apartment and got a house. Went through the whole process. I educated myself here, started my career here, all of that stuff. Don't know how personal and painful the conversation should be, but of course that comes with its ups and downs, and it's no secret that when one divorces and remarries, that there's a whole drama that happens there in the background, of course.
Yeah, and I can identify with that. I am 22 years into my second marriage.
Congratulations on both the divorce and the marriage.
Well, thank you. Well, and a lot of people, I have to laugh too, because a lot of people, when somebody says that they got divorced or they just broke up, everyone's first reaction is, "Oh, I'm sorry." Well, maybe you should congratulate them and buy them a drink, because maybe this is a very, very positive thing in their life. No offense to any exes out there, but sometimes it just doesn't work. It's time to move on.
Right. So that's my stance on it. Now, having been experienced, we were married for almost 11 years. Mind you. So before we were separated, we were married for a decade. And if you include everything all together, we were together for about 12 years before we separated. So it was there was a whole lifetime that we lived there as adults. So it's not like there's any secrets here between us where it's like suddenly it'll be, whoa, she found out I hate her. Like, it's not like that, where there's no real animosity there. Things have cooled off. But I will say that this whole thing about congratulating, it's important, I think, because not to like rub it in people's faces, but it's actually like, hey, it was tough. It was really tough to reach that decision. It was not easy to say goodbye to my kids and to say goodbye to a marriage and the investments and money and time that goes into it. It's like, it's a whole massive spectrum of stuff that goes into it, right? And so
sure.
I think that congratulations are in order, and that's why I feel like you deserve them too. I know the feeling, man.
Yeah, and I can, speaking about my first marriage, a terrible marriage, a lot of beauty because it gave us a son.
Yeah.
But then fast forward to him turning in his 25th year, he died of a heroin overdose.
Oh no.
And that was very much connected to the dynamic of that marriage, which at that time had been finished for over 18 years.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So that whole thing with marriage and divorce and kids and all that stuff, it's such a dynamic thing. My thing is I always try to remember the first reaction to news about someone getting divorced. It should not be sadness, because sometimes it's a good thing. And I went into this beautiful thing that I've had now, for 22 years, and that's my queen, and we got 2 beautiful kids. Life moves in its strange ways, and we are kind of forced to move with it. I mean, we can shape it, but we still have to move with it. So,
absolutely.
Regret, sadness, nah, not always.
It was there. It's not like it's not there, it's like it's there at first, but as time goes on, I agree with you, man. It's like there's a flow, and you can choose to stand like a rock, or you can become one with the water, as they say.
Yeah. And I look at life, for me anyway, life in Norway, it's so hard to be upset about anything. Life is good here.
It's comfortable and predictable. I'll give you that.
Well, okay. And at my age, I'm looking for both comfort and predictability. I mean, I like excitement too, and everything is constantly in development, but I like a certain amount of predictability, and I certainly like comfort. So life is good.
I'm aging myself. Like I said, I'm turning 36. But
man, you're not aging. Stop it. Stop it, Kyle.
We talk about the future that's coming. First, you were asking me about like the past and what brought me here to have this job in the first place, right? I mean, you're absolutely right, and I'm not entirely sure. Not as a dig to to your knowledge on the subject area, but like because I think that it's commonplace, especially if you live in Norway and you've been here for a while, to think of fish farming as or aquaculture, like we call it in the field. That it's like you think about salmon.
Yes.
It's the second biggest export here. It's a distant second, but it's second place to oil. But halibut, it's a weird one. There's not a whole lot of farming of halibut going on in the world, let alone like in Norway at all, but let alone in the world. To be honest, as you say, one of very few.
Yeah, well, to be honest, and I love halibut, but thinking about it, and to be honest, I don't eat it that often because it's not really that available, which if you just extrapolate those facts, that'll tell you, it's not a very widespread industry. Of course, commercial fishing is, and but halibut is not the biggest part of that. Yeah,
no.
People think of salmon. At least here in Norway, they think of salmon.
And else depends on where you're at in the world. I mean, I'm a treasure trove of trivia when it comes to world aquaculture. But just to spare you the doldrums of all the data, I could say that what we do here in Norway, like we're approaching. 1.6, 1.7 million metric tons per year with salmon. It sounds like a huge amount. It's like 1% of the world's production, maybe 2.
Yeah.
So halibut
still a lot of
is
meals.
like it absolutely, but it's like a luxury product,
Yeah,
like
you're right.
especially the higher end stuff that we export. It's just like superior quality. It's out of reach of the average consumer, and much like some the stuff in Norway in general, it's like there's a lot of export. And then they import it back. They do it with the fish and with the oil, and it's that's a whole other political discussion maybe. But with halibut, it's just like the super tiny sliver of production. Yeah. So we're real niche, and that has some benefits. Nordic Halibut is a corporation that, as far as I've come to understand, I think we're about 100 people in total.
Oh, wow.
A handful of farms. No, it's pretty small. It's a handful of farms. A few, 4 out in the ocean that are like these net pens, like you see with salmon, basically.
Yeah.
And then we've got a couple of land-based facilities that get fish ready to go out to sea. And then we're the only one currently that produces the babies. So we have the real big ones. So you talk about like rare jobs. Someone who's in charge of the production of broodstock, as we call them, the parents, for halibut in commercial fish farming. I stand alone. And so with that comes a whole lot of interesting challenges, but also a lot of welcome challenges for me. I love walking into a system that's got so many things that can be improved and optimized, but on its own actually runs. It's been super cool so far.
I was just going to say, from the way you're describing the industry, the way it is in Norway, how niche it is, and then how extra niche, if I can use that phrase, it is with you in your position, you are probably in a space where you can be fairly innovative and people are going to listen.
Yes, for the most part. I would say without speaking like too loudly about it because I'm fresh here, and hell, I haven't even met the CEO personally yet, so I don't have too many degrees of freedom when it comes to explaining just how innovative I can be. However, I can speak to my own background, absolutely, which is that I am a researcher of fish welfare in several different species. It's my specialty, and I've also worked on fish farms, and I've worked as a teacher in aquaculture in the high school system here. I've trained at the university level bachelor and master students of aquaculture, as well as collaborated with other PhDs in the field. So everything from down on the ground up to the upper echelons of people who form policy and stuff with their research that they conduct. I've got a pretty good grasp on not just salmon, but also alternative species. So as far as qualifications go, I have to admit, like I will toot my own horn here. Like they landed a pretty decent catch. I am both knowledgeable in my field, but I love to get my hands dirty. You know, I love to get in and actually make something work. Like just yesterday, actually, I put on a dry suit and I was down in the tank, water up to my beard, and I was literally walking around herding these halibut that are broodstock for the summer season. We had to put them in one tank where we can get the eggs out, and then when they're done, you move them back to the other one. And we have this like trench system where you fill up the tank and you push them in, and then they swim across.
You can't get much more hands-on than that.
It was super cool. It was really fun. It was a little tough. You float a lot, so you got to have extra weights and stuff. But finally ended up doing it. But some of those fish, man, I tell you, I don't know if you know how big halibut can get, but
oh yes,
my size, I'm 6 foot and 150, and there are absolutely some others in there, not currently, but have been that recently left us, that were 17, 18 years old, that were exactly my same dimensions in body, but the ones I was moving, they were near mine. They're big.
How do those halibut that are raised at your facilities compare in size with wild halibut in general? Because I've seen, we have another place way up north in Finnmark, and we've caught some wild halibut that were, I almost don't dare to put out what I think the measurements were, but they were pretty doggone big. I'm not 6 foot. I'm about 5'8". Yeah. And some of them have been, my dimensions roughly. Yeah. So size wise, how does it compare with the wild with the raised, the farm halibut?
There is essentially no difference.
Okay.
When they
I asked that because I was thinking of the nutrition and just
of course. A natural, logical question. So the nutrition is absolutely not the same as what they get out in the wild. Right. We give them processed feed like you would to any farm, like livestock. Yeah. Now, of course, the feed that they get is given our limited knowledge when it comes to the species. Like overall, like we have a lot of years of experience and things have functioned very well. And so it's like it goes just the way that it is. But anyway, to answer your question, we feed them a lot more often in the amount that they get, I would assume, as a person, like I said, like as a trained marine biologist, if I had to assume, I'd say wild halibut, they probably live considerably longer and eat a lot less often. Which sounds a bit strange, maybe, but they just kind of lay there and wait. Yeah, they're super like the ones that we've got on the farm here. I know for a fact that they could go without eating the big ones for about a calendar year. Wow, they could just lay there and just they'll just chill. Like they
I was aware. Yeah, I was aware of halibut being the kind of fish that just kind of lay there and don't really do too much activity wise, but to go that long without eating, wow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow. Sure. When they brood, when we spawn them, they have to go without feed all in all from start to end of their season for about 3.5 months. They don't eat.
Wow.
But they also don't have an appetite. So So like they naturally don't need.
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess you don't need much energy when you're just kind of laying there at the bottom of
Yeah, it's very energy demanding to produce all those eggs. So we have to make sure that they're nice and strong and well fed and healthy beforehand. Any wounds that they have, we treat them individually. Each of them are pit tagged, which is very different from the salmon industry, for example, which means they have this little radio frequency ID chip in them, RFID. And we just scan them. Number pops up. We know who they are. And these broodstock, the real big ones, they have names.
You name them too.
Yeah, we've got a Moana, we've got a Leif, we've got a Aurora. Like we've got a whole bunch of different names.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. So, Korea. Let's talk about that. I was in the United States Marines. I was in Busan for a few months. I can't remember, was it 91 or 92? I think it was 92. Wintertime, 92, the winter military exercises that I think this is still going on every year, but back then it was every winter.
Yeah, like so many before you, I was going to say.
Yeah. Quite an I was in a position where I had a little bit more time than most of the other Marines that were there, where I could actually get out and get among the people.
Yeah.
Quite an interesting culture.
Huge difference.
Did you learn to speak Korean while you were there?
No, I was there for a year and a half.
Okay.
My dad was stationed there in Yongsan, so in like right central Seoul, as a JAG, as a lawyer in the army. And I moved over there halfway through their 3-year tour, which was with my mother and my little brother as well, 5 years younger. So he going to high school on post, he learned some Korean.
Okay.
Excuse me. So I think he got pretty good at Korean and also German after that when they moved to Bavaria. But I was there for a year and a half, and I wasn't too concerned with learning the language, I guess. I don't know. It wasn't high up on the priority list.
No. But I would imagine you're fluent in Norwegian.
Absolutely. If you want, we could take the whole interview in Norwegian. It's totally fine.
I love it. Well, and I think that's important. There's a lot of Americans in Norway, a lot of English speakers in Norway who don't put forth. Well, I shouldn't say that. Well, yes, some of them don't put forth an effort. Some of them do put forth the effort, but they just can't get it. And you see that reflected in the quality of their life, their social life, their work life,
very much so.
Their love life, their family life. Yeah. It's an issue for a lot of us. First of all, I think Norwegian is a beautiful language, especially the dialect that I speak. Which is the way up north. Those northern dialects, I think, are beautiful. Sounds like in my musician's ear, it sounds like music. So to be able to speak it, say again.
It's especially Finnmark.
Yes.
I lived in Malta for a time, and I really the dialect up there is my favorite by far. Easiest to understand, easiest to digest, and very friendly.
And if you go out Altafjord up to the islands, Sæland, Sørøya, it's even more musical. It's a little bit different. It's even more musical and even more open and friendly. We have our place on Sæland, and I just, I'm down here in Drammen now, but my heart is up at our other place up on Sæland. That's paradise for me. Yeah, cool. But so you're in Korea. Where were you before you went to South Korea?
I was still living in Richmond, in Virginia, where I was born and raised.
Yeah. Okay.
I moved around a little bit in the States when I was younger, but it was pretty much in Virginia.
In Virginia, yeah. Interesting. So you military kids. Now you tell me if I'm out of line here.
Go right ahead.
Military kids, from what I saw both during my time in the U.S. Marines, but also since then with people who I've known and they've told me their stories or I've made my own observations, it seems that children of military parents, or if they have one or more military parents, they are either very, very well adjusted socially and they're successful in their lives, or it's the opposite. It's almost a traumatic response that they have after that life I'm kind of associating that, I think, with the at times the inability of setting your roots to any one place because you're moving quite a bit. What can you say about that?
Well, so I myself, I had the luxury of not growing up in the, if we take it from the perspective like you're saying right now, this trial by fire kind of essence that it carries, and it does. You'd be even better off speaking with my wife, actually, Steffi. She's a Navy brat through and through.
Okay.
But for me, during my childhood, up until the point that I myself moved out when I was almost 18, my father was in the reserves and was activated after September 11th. So there was a period there where he was away, stationed for shorter periods or on training missions and things like that. So he was away, but not places where he could take his family on tour with him. So it wasn't until right when I was moving out that they were also taking on this new chapter. So it's more my little brother, Zach. He went with them to Seoul, and he went with them to Bavaria, 3 years each. And then they moved out to Kansas, of all places, after that for another stint. So he's been a little all over the place. And with him, roots, he was a little younger when they left. Yeah, he was 12, 13, something like that. But for me, I don't have to think about it that much. It was mostly that he was gone, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
You could say it was more about the absence of a father figure. That's also a typical thing, that's pretty often it's a combination of those two things, It's just that in my case, I didn't have to move around a whole lot. We moved a few times, but it was mostly career stuff, not military.
Are you too close these days?
A lot closer than we were at the time. I could say that openly.
That's beautiful.
I think so. Yes. It's. I will admit, for my own sake, and I imagine that we haven't really talked that much about it, I guess. But for my own sake, I could say that it carries its challenges. You kind of get stuck in the, especially when all this happens during your adolescent formative years. It's always a recipe for success, you just know it's going to cause some bullshit. Like it's going to, something's going to come out the other end you don't like. But good things can come out of it too. The experiences that he's had being so career driven alongside my mother, who's also been very career driven. It's like, it's a little double-edged, right? Because later on as an adult, as long as I'm able to end up well-adjusted enough to have my own career, my own family, my own home, then I can look back on their experiences and harvest something useful from that.
Sure.
But during the time, overall, wasn't great being a teenage boy, kind of unsure of what a paternal figure really is, and what to expect from one. It wasn't great.
Did it cause any? Well, I would imagine it caused insecurity on you, but did it cause any bitterness? Did you find yourself pointing the finger rather than analyzing yourself? Maybe you're looking outward and pointing a finger. Did that happen? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's not at all unusual, perhaps. I am and have been for some time quite a reflected person, you could say. I tend to take a rather philosophical perspective when it comes to life experience in general. Yeah. But when I was younger, when you're a teenager and this is like, I hate to say things like this because it sounds so like haughty, but when you're relatively intelligent and you have the resources around you that permit you to obtain enough information to radicalize in any way, shape, or form as an adolescent, you're going to gravitate towards idealisms or isms in general that are just kind of revolutionary in their tactics and revolutionary in their doctrines.
Yeah.
So like I ended up thinking very much so like, oh, the military is garbage. This military industrial complex is the downfall of society. Is like they tout anti-socialism, but they themselves practice socialism. All the typical adolescent rebellious kind of you know, like rhetoric. But from that certainly came a tendency to point the finger at authority, right? Like it's only logical that it would end up that way. Now, even so, in my like later years, relative to that, we're talking 20 years plus, I still like, I wouldn't say that I harbor bitterness anymore. I've metabolized it, at least as far as I can tell. Maybe there's something deep in there. But I've had a lot of therapy, like we're talking 6 years weekly with the same guy. The only reason I stopped is because he died of a heart attack all of a sudden. And I still feel a little bit like, I don't know, it wasn't super cool having like a mother that's really career driven, 60-hour-a-week person starting her own businesses and stuff. And then a father who's busy with his own military career, like in the professional context of military, rather than simply, you know, maintaining your service while pursuing something else. Because at the same time, he still also wanted to learn to be a lawyer. So he was doing full-time law school.
Well, and then in a situation like that, a lot of young people will feel ignored, kind of pushed aside into the shadows. That may not be the case, but I can see where a young person would feel that way. Having two parents in a situation like that, with the father being physically gone due to the work that he does. The mother too, mostly. She was gone pretty often. She worked a lot. Yeah. And she still lived her own life, to put it that way, afterwards. Like afterwards, she still had a life. Very social person, friends and outings and all that. See, I'm fortunate. When I go back to my childhood, and I've talked about my childhood a lot on my program, I'm not going to get into detail, but it wasn't the best childhood, but in a way it was the best because, there may have been problems inside the four walls of our physical house, but I did have a ton of family around me. We grew up right next door to my aunt and uncle, my mom's brother and his wife and their three kids, my cousins. They were more like sisters, and then 2 blocks away was my grandparents on my father's side. Another 2 blocks and catty corner up was my grandmother on my mother's side. Wow. And and then 1 block over from her was my grandma's sister and her husband. And, so that's what I had, That can swing both ways. well, I'll put it to you this way. If I would not have had that extended family network, I mean, it was a literal net. We were surrounded. We were engulfed in family. If I didn't have that, I would not be the man that I am today, because some of the things that were happening within the 4 walls of our physical house would have shaped me into a much less productive and well-adjusted man that I am today. So that family dynamic, the immediate family dynamic, but also the exterior, less immediate family dynamic is crucial. And when there's some anomaly, such as having 2 parents who are not really there, that in itself can have traumatic effect. And I'm I'm not blaming your parents for anything, but it's just, I'll do it for you. That happens. Things can happen. I'm sorry, say again? Had the conversation. I said, I'll do it for you. It's fine. We've had the conversation. I've talked to him about it. I said that, not only do I not really think it was super cool, the way that you guys really prioritized monetary gain and status over, being present for your kids, but also I hope you know that as a result of the absence, it just ended up with me filling in the gaps myself, like cats away most of the time. It's kind of a society is kind of setting families up to struggle. I'm quite a bit older than you. When I was a kid, households were quite capable of having one income, and it would be just fine. Mm-hmm. And then these days we have the rat race. Both parents working, usually one and quite likely both of them working too much. And you start to rely on things like daycare, if that. Some kids are just on their own. On their own,
Yeah.
And you don't have that immediate parental guidance, and there is an effect of that
Totally.
on the individuals, but also on society. It's
Yes, you've got these other factors to bake into that, right?
Sure,
I mean,
sure,
the topic
sure.
that you're touching on is like it's such a massive thing that's happening so much faster than it used to now.
Yes.
With the rate of information exchange and the foundational like standard minimum of information present in the individual. Like if you ask the average 12-year-old today something that they couldn't possibly have known 20 years ago, it's like a given that they just know unnecessarily huge amounts of things that a lot of times they really don't have business knowing. It's kind of like, why are they inundated with all of this? And you combine that with the need for the parents to be more away in order to keep up with that speed at the same time. It's just like this exponential shit show.
Yeah. You know, it's just something that I've been very aware of. Our daughter is 18. She just left to go to study. She's out on the West Coast now.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Mission accomplished. You know, a lot of parents, and I've said this before our daughter even left, I would talk often about how a lot of parents, they get so sad when their children leave. You know, it's like their hearts are broken. And I just don't see it that way. I am so happy. I mean, this is kind of proof that my wife and I did a good job, that she made this decision on her own to choose this school and to leave the nest. That means that we've done something right. We've given her the tools that she needs in order to step out there. So I'm very proud of that. Do I sound arrogant? Oh, I don't care. I'm very proud of that. And,
you should be
I
proud.
think it's going to.
That's a lot of work.
It's going to be. Yeah. Oh, good God, is it a lot of work? And it's going to be the same thing with our son in a couple of years when he turns 18. Mm-hmm. It's going to be another stamp of approval in the way we've parented both of them. And I think there's a thing in society where parents have gotten selfish. They love their kids,
very much so.
But you said two words earlier, and they go hand in hand: wealth and status. So many parents these days, that is their number one priority, and not the kids.
Yeah.
And it shows.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
You have to have a certain amount of wealth because things cost money, and status will make you feel good, and status could lead to a level of success that does bring you more money, which you can then apply to your family's life situation. But you've got to have things in the right order, and I'm not trying to preach morals, but you know, people have to have these things in the right order. You've got to think about the effects of every single step you take when you're a parent, and there's some parents, unfortunately, that do not do that.
It's no different here in Norway than it is back home.
Yeah,
it's a different system and a different code of ethics, sort of like the standard of what you can expect. But the trend. And
I'll tell you. To speak of the trend, I believe that the trend here in Norway is to lean on the social benefits, which are excellent. You know, when our daughter was born, I had a whole year off from work, and my job was still waiting. I had a whole year off, spent that time with my daughter. Beautiful. You can't match that in the States. This is a Norwegian thing. So I'm very thankful for the social goods, the social benefits here in Norway. But I do see so many parents, and I know this from some of the work I did with child services, so many of these parents here in Norway, they lean on that. In other words, they know, I can do my thing. You know, I can go out and do my thing. I can focus on my job because the government's got my, I think the government, I don't remember how much is, they send a couple thousand kroners every month to mothers all the way up until the kids turn 18 and things like that. So they lean on the financial goods that the Norwegian social system, and that's taking the place of parenting in some cases. It's pretty sad.
Yes, couldn't agree more. And the difficult thing about it is that it is quite functional on paper, right? This welfare state that
the
they
numbers
have
match
here,
up.
it makes sense. And I've got 6 kids here, two step kids and 4 kids of my own, and to say nothing of the state support that comes along with it. Like, of course, it's great. I don't
absolutely
rely on, or we don't rely on it as like, we have this income, therefore we don't need this or something. It's like,
right.
But in our household, it's for medical reasons, my wife isn't able to work.
Oh, okay.
And so it's really good to have a system in place like we have. It's actually the system for disability is very similar here as it is in the States. It's just the system's a bit smaller, and there's a lot more people working in it. Like the NOV system is super top heavy, so there's a lot of processing, and it goes
big bureaucracy.
Yes, huge. This country lives off of red tape.
They do.
But having that ability has been great. Being able to see my babies grow up, and if I'm sick, I don't need to worry about losing my job and stuff like that. It's like, it's cool. But I have to admit that, I've started to get a bad taste in my mouth for seeing over a third of my paycheck disappear every month. You know what? It's crazy. Especially when it's not even that high.
Well, I can't deny that, the tax percentage is what it is. But what I found out when I came here all those years ago, of course, my wife, being Norwegian, she had told me the way, how heavily things are taxed here. So I was always like, oh my God, that's horrible. But almost right away, I just gave up thinking like that. It's not even that I gave it up. I just stopped. No, I just stopped thinking like that. And I can't say that I notice. I mean, I know what the tax percentage is, but I can't say that I notice it. I can't say that I can't say that it hurts. I mean, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. And I just adjust both my consumption of goods and my, it basically, it is what I don't like that phrase. It is what it is. People use that too much, but that's kind of the way I look at the tax system. It doesn't hurt baked anymore.
It's totally baked in. So you make
it is.
You make proportionately according, like relative to the standard of living, blah blah blah. But I say that all in all, when I look at the numbers of like how much one could earn doing the job I have, for example, in the States. Oh no, man! I would, and there's some other issues I don't really care. Like I'm open about this stuff, but I don't know like who's listening or like how people will feel about like hearing this this message. But when it comes to like, you get your state healthcare, for example. That's the number one thing that everybody, especially in the States, you like. Oh, there's this socialist democracy, which Norway isn't, mind you. It is not actually a socialist democracy. The healthcare system is painfully, sorely outdated, undermanned, undereducated, underfunded, and lacks a certain give a fuck. Like I've literally had, there's literal MD telling people that I know someone I know personally, that in the face of their symptoms, that they ought to consider seeking Jesus. It's like, how the
you got a doctor tell you that?
Yes. How is that a valid argument from a trained medical professional? It's like, I don't care about your creed as a doctor. You can follow whatever organized religion you want, or cult for that matter. You could be a Satanist. It doesn't matter. They tend to be good people, actually. But as a medical professional, when you're giving clinical advice to somebody, I don't think you need to find Jesus is valid, And I think that when my tax dollars, and mind you, we talk about, my tax dollars, like in the States, that's kind of a joke because you don't pay taxes. But here, you pay taxes, bro. Like I pay some taxes. Tell you what,
we pay some taxes.
Yeah, like and my it's like, it's great for the stuff that it helps. But then the stuff that it helps, you have to kind of take a closer look at some of it. And it's like, you start to notice like, you get state healthcare. But man, do you really? People die waiting for cancer treatment, literally, because they need to be far enough along to justify invasive treatment. People go to other countries,
You're very right in what you're saying, but let me throw a little caveat in there, and I'll say this, and this is not a good thing, but the level of healthcare, the quality, the timeliness of healthcare here in Norway, it's all free, but depending on where you live, that plays a factor.
Definitely.
If you live down in the southeast, around Oslo, these bigger cities, it's a different thing than it is way up north.
Very much so.
In Finnmark.
Yeah.
I'm just
Especially
thinking about
Finnmark. Oh my God, you were
I'm just thinking
you're
about
on the edge of the world, man. You're on the edge of the world.
Literally.
Yeah.
Well, our son was born up there. Now, we were sitting at home, and it came on the news. The news came on, and it showed a winter storm, basically a winter hurricane. Was on its way, and it was going to slam right into Finnmark.
I know exactly where this is going.
So we made the decision right then and there. We're going to tell. We're not going to ask the hospital. We're going to tell the hospital, which was about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours away to drive. But we're going to tell them that we are coming, and they have to induce labor.
Yeah.
Because of this storm. And, we kind of, puffed up our chests and did some push-ups and got ready for a fight with the hospital. But they were like, no, we got you. Come on out.
That's good. But that's a hit or miss right there, bud. That is a hit or miss. It is not always that easy.
It's not. But see, now here's the thing. Here's the duality of that situation. Healthcare is not very timely, and sometimes the quality sucks way up there in Finnmark. However, the good people within the healthcare system in Finnmark and places like that know that. So they will, bend the rules and listen a little bit better to the patients and whatnot. And luckily, that's what we experienced. So our son was born during a winter hurricane up in Hammerfest,
that is about as intense as it gets, man.
It was pretty wild, and we were nervous. We had to take a ferry to get there from our place and an island hop over to around the corner, so to speak, out in the ocean to Hammerfest.
With that storm rolling in, I bet
with
the water
that storm
was real
rolling
friendly.
in, so it's pretty wild. It was pretty wild, but that's so. I don't know. I everything you said about the difficulties with healthcare in Norway, I agree with you 100%. But it is location dependent as far as the quality and timeliness, and it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, but look at the country, dude. It's this long strip, and there's only 5 million of them, and they're spread out between a handful of cities. In reality, half of them are in Oslo, Bergen, Stavanger, and the other half is just spread along the coast, basically.
To put it in perspective for people who don't know much about Norway, when we go to our place up in Finnmark, we drive, and that's if we're pushing it, we can make it in 3 days. If we take our time, it's a 4-day drive to get up there, and there's a whole lot of nothing between here in Drammen and our place up there. It's the healthcare system, and also the just the bureaucracy of government suffers because of these long distances and lack of people and wide open spaces. But all things considered, would you say that Norway is doing an okay job? There's a lot to criticize, and I agree with everything you said, but I try to take the very things that we're saying in criticism, kind of explain the need for that criticism. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, shoot.
Should we give Norway a break?
You're making me think hard here. So
there we go. I'm a good podcast host.
So should we give him a break? Okay, so here's the short and skinny on Norway. Richest country in the world per capita. Hands down, like the amount of money that's in this country when you include all of the investments and investment funds and everything, like it's just, there is no contest. It is disgustingly filthy rich here. However, that money is off limits. Like anytime it's brought up in political debates, it's like you don't do it. Like it's a taboo. If you bring up the oil fund, you're immediately ostracized.
Yeah, Norway uses very little of that capital. It's just sitting. Well, it's not just sitting there; it's being invested. But
it's fake, dude. It's fake money, and that's what I'm trying to get at. Is that it's basically just an enormous buy-in into the simulation that we call currency, and Norway is relying on a system that is built up on a house of cards that's formed up of different types of debt. Essentially, if you dig into it, Norway is effectively in as much debt as it is rich.
It's a little scary. I don't know what it's like at the moment, but there was a time where for many, many years, I'm talking a decade or more, Norwegian citizens had the highest credit card debt, literally the highest debt in the world. And that's kind of mind blowing. It's like, what are they spending their money on?
Electric cars, Teslas.
Well, and taxes.
Taxes and electric cars, man. No, it's a very real problem here. One of the big issues with that is actually that it's very, very easy to get a credit card here. Like way easier than it should be. Credit checks here it's like home inspections. That's a whole other can of worms. But I tell you, home inspections here, buyer fucking beware, dude. It is not like it is back home.
It's not.
But anyway, should we give Norway a break? Well, first and foremost, the way that they are handling the funds that could be used to upgrade the brick and mortar status of the healthcare system and the infrastructure, I am, by Norwegian standards, blue, or like in the States we'd say red, but like very conservative by Norwegian standards. But then by American standards, I'm like a communist, so I can't win. So my standpoint is going to be pretty convoluted no matter where I go, it seems like. But I will say that Norway came into money rapidly, and a lot of it, and there were some growing pains. And I think that the growth only really occurred in conduit parts, and then all of the nodes that spread from those conduits are still lagging behind in a way, but in other ways they're also catching up relatively quickly. And this is all very this is all very cryptic and hard for people to understand that don't live here. And I will openly admit that what I'm saying is like difficult to pin down, but anyone who knows anything about like, you know, how things work here and how the people are and everything, I think that there is a little bit more that could be done. Like I want to give them a break, but I feel like there is an across the board lack of going the extra mile. You see it a lot in like customer service. That's like a chronic issue in this country. Customer service. It's like, I don't know if I'm going to, like, I go to a store and I ask someone for help and I'm like, why? It's over there. Go get it. Like literally. It's a super common thing. And so
it is.
It goes all the way up the chain to people who are in charge of the healthcare system. Especially when it comes to things like considering logistics, like you're talking about like being far away from a hospital and stuff. That's like the whole thing about the hospital in Lofoten, in Leknes, where I used to live before we moved down here, actually. That whole, I was standing there in line with all my students at the school I was teaching at the time with torches along the highway while the head of this branch office went into the hospital for their meeting in order to discuss shutting it down or not, like emergency surgery and
Isn't that something? Isn't that something? Just to tie it together, that particular point just blows my mind when they shut down these hospitals that are out in the districts. Let's tie it together. Norway, richest country in the world per capita, tons of money that's, as we said, is basically just sitting there. You've got a population that's very thin and spread out, but you've got all this money, and why not put it towards better service? Now, when I say service, I'm talking about in the legal police system. I'm talking about the healthcare system. I'm talking about roads. I'm talking about housing. I'm talking about schooling. Norway has the money to do it. And for the life of me, I can't understand why they don't pull a little bit of money out of the oil fund. Just a little bit. And in perspective, you know, in the scope of things, it's not a lot of money considering that Norway has so much of it. Why don't they do it? I'm looking for a politician to come on my show and answer that question.
I can give you my 2 cents. Why don't they do it? Well, I would argue that it all, if you really take the long road, it kind of boils down to this practice that they have. They practice. It's like a cultural norm. They have janteloven, right, which is this rule, this unwritten rule that no person can be better or worse than the person next to them. So it's like if everybody in the room, if 8 out of 10 in the room are getting a C, and you're getting an A, and someone else is getting an F, you are looked at just as bitterly as the person who got an F if you get an A.
Right.
And
it's
so
a very
this
strange
kind of
Norwegian thing. It's very odd.
And so if you've got like all this money sitting around, it's like, well, how come these people get it but the other ones don't? And then deciding who gets it. This bureaucracy that you keep hinting at, it's very, very real. The issue of like.
And my answer, I'm sorry to butt in, but my answer to a politician would be those who gets it, those who need it. And if you don't need it, you're not losing anything. If anything, if you're a person who does not need assistance in some way, but your neighbor needs assistance, I will submit that if your neighbor gets that assistance that they need, it's also to your benefit.
Yeah.
You know, the weakest among us, if they are strengthened, it strengthens everybody as a whole.
Yeah.
I believe that. I believe that in a social context. I do believe that.
Hey, man, that's very American of you. And I really miss a dose of that in my daily life. I will admit that it's actually, like, all in all, it's a little disheartening to see that it's just the way that it is. Like you say, it is what it is. Well, it's all baked in there, you know, like this regionalism. It's like with the dialects, like there's 100 dialects roughly,
at least.
And it's all because they're just so isolated pockets of a lot of times inbreeding populations over a long period of time. And then there were a couple of different kingdoms that were in charge, and then suddenly they're independent, and suddenly there were roads and ferries and bridges and tunnels, and suddenly there was a shit ton of money. And still you've got people that are like 70 years old that remember when the biggest productivity of Norway was lumber or grain or fish export. And it's like things have changed a lot and so rapidly that maybe they just need time to catch up. But I don't know if I really buy that. I don't know. Maybe they're just waiting for the old ones to die off. I don't know what the deal is.
My question to people who say that is, how long do we have to wait? I get into this all the time with Norwegians. If we start talking about some of the social ills in Norway, like racism, for example, and then they
don't
say,
get me started.
Well, check this out, Kyle. They'll tell me very often. I hear this from a lot of Norwegians. It's only been a generation or so, maybe 2 generations, that we've even had Black people in Norway. And it's like, well, how freaking long does it take for you to realize that people are people? And how long does it take? Does it take a generation or 2 to understand the concept of equality?
400 years. Look at history. That's what it takes. Well, it takes 400 years.
Apparently. But you get what I'm saying, though. You know,
absolutely.
So that excuse
I fall victim to the same thing. I'm not as dark skinned as you are, but being of both Asian and ethnic Jewish descent, I look different, you know.
Different,
And the only reason I'm as pale as I am is because I've been living in northern Norway for 15 fucking years. So it's sucked the melanin out of me. This is not my natural complexion. But I don't quite fit in. People hear me speak Norwegian and they're like, wow, you're so well adjusted, you know. It's like it's kind of this whole, it's like, wow, you're so well behaved,
right?
But this is an interesting thing. This topic that you bring up about racism, it's actually I talk about this a lot with people that question and they wonder. And it's like, well, Norway, the crime is so low. No. there's a very, very bad culture of drugs and child abuse, especially child sexual abuse, definitely all over the place that people don't talk about. But then race, it's like, I actually describe it to people that, like, talk, well, what about America? Like, crazy, everyone's so racist. It's like, well, the way that I view it is that you've got two different types. There's this individual racism and this institutional racism, right? And in the States, we have so little institutional racism, like equality and even equity to a relatively great extent relative to the rest of the world is quite high, actually. But the individual racism that's allowed to exist, it's crazy. So because individuals can become so powerful in the States and so outspoken, it actually has an institutional level effect, but it's still just individuals. But I'm
glad you said that, because that was going to be my counterpoint to you saying that there's very little institutional racism in America. And that was going to be my counterpoint.
But it comes from that,
from those individuals.
So it's private.
Yeah.
But here, the private sector isn't where you see it. It's not like it's the average everyday person. It's like, okay, I'm not used to seeing black people, so I still use the term neger. It's like, what is wrong with you, dude? It's like you need to adjust, like turn on a TV. You know what I mean? It's really unsettling. Like it makes me uncomfortable. And then like people use words like that, like they don't use the same words that we use in the States, but like with that, it's really fucking close.
It really is.
It's like it's uncomfortable, and like man, there's people that are like 60 that openly use it like it's just a totally normal thing to say about like a person. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. But the institutional racism here, it's like it's really hard to get over as a person of any sort of color that isn't ethnic Norwegian, as far as I'm concerned. And that's not even just darker skinned. It's also like other, especially like Eastern European. It's tough. Like the state is like, it feels like it's rejecting transplanted limbs all the time or something. Like I feel kind of like I'm never really fully integrated in a way.
Here's how I approach that. To me, it's almost offensive. It's almost an offensive word, that the way some Norwegians use the word integration. Because in many of their minds, integration means wiping away all you were before and replacing with all things Norwegian.
That's it there.
And I refuse to do that. In a sense, same. I am not integrated. I have not changed my moral compass does not point in a different direction now.
But it shouldn't have to fit in.
Well, try and tell that to some of these uber Norwegians. And that's my whole thing is if integration means this thing, that I'm supposed to forget who I am, where I came from, I'm supposed to drop all of my ways of thinking and doing, that ain't going to happen. So I guess I'm not integrated. I get by let me say this the right way. I'm successful in Norway with the work that I do, with my family and everything, because of who I am. Why would I want to stop being who I am to appease someone who is probably a xenophobe?
Well, I can tell
that's
you
the way
why.
I look at it.
You should do it because everyone is supposed to be of equal value and equal productivity and equal standing, right? That's their definition of equality here, is that equity needs to disappear. Like you have to assume that everybody comes from the same start point, and therefore equality is simply giving everyone exactly the same thing. Equity is not a part of the discussion. So to them, they are actually treating us or I say they are treating us. Man, that sounds really militant. I don't mean it that harshly, but like on an institutional level, that is really how it is.
And these people who think like this, I call them socially arrogant.
Sure. That's a good way. I might steal that. That's totally fair.
Go right
I would
ahead.
say, but it is a sort of social arrogance. You believe that your society is the superior society. Essentially, when you cook it down, that's exactly what it is. And I don't know, man. Coming from the States, it's like, yeah, okay, we've got like USA #1, but what does that really mean? No one really knows what that means, you know?
No.
Like, but in Norway, it means like Norway #1. It's like, oh, you're gonna eat your fucking bread with the butter and cheese on it, and you're gonna drink the same ass black coffee that everyone else drinks at 9 and 2, and you're gonna like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just like there's this way of existing. And of course of speaking. If you don't speak Norwegian, like you were saying all the way at the very beginning, man, you talk about having a hard time fitting in. If you don't speak the language, man, and even if you speak the language, but you have an accent that doesn't fit in, even if you're actually like fluent.
Yeah.
Like,
and then you put on top of that the wrong skin color or the wrong shape of the eyes, and it leads to trouble. It's a level of social arrogance, but
social arrogance. I love that.
I think I'm the first one to use that. I've been using it a lot on my show. I call it it's a social arrogance.
Never heard
use
it before,
that.
but
Go ahead, man. It's not patented yet. It's not copyrighted yet.
No, I'll credit you.
Let me ask you this.
Sure, I am an open book. I feel like I haven't really given you anything deep and interview worthy. Like, come on, ask me a good question. What you got?
Well, this is more of a conversation than an interview. But
you want to know something?
Well, but I will say this: your life. Well, okay. Let me. I'm going to give you a pre-question.
Good start.
Your life. ... No, let me give you a pre-question. Do you lean left or right politically? I know the answer, but.
I mean, like I've said, it depends on what country I'm in. But I think that overall, I have, as I've grown older, I've leaned further to the right than I did originally when I was younger. So I would say I was more left, and I've gradually become more right as I've grown in age.
And that's interesting. I don't know if what you said about you just now is interesting, or is my response to that interesting, because I have gone more from the right to the left as I've aged.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask people that, and then they give their answer, and most people give the answer that you gave. So I'm trying to figure out what is the divergence? Why am I moving this way and everyone else is moving that way?
Well, I have an interpretation if you'd like to hear.
Please.
So I honestly believe that in large part, when people say that they're right-leaning, they tend to mean actually they lean towards traditional values, or they lean towards fiscal conservatism. Specifically, in large part, it's people who actually lean towards fiscal conservatism, but they're relatively socially liberal still, despite. And that's especially among like the millennial generation. Like, that's a really, really common thread. People really want to like support the wokest agenda, but then they also don't really want the government in their pockets because they feel like they don't make enough money as it is. So it tends to just kind of gravitate towards that for my generation. But I will say that I think that it might be because you've maintained a sort of like on a very general level here, like this is super simplified, but I think that it's possible that you've maintained a sort of naivete or curiosity or hope even that exists within all of us from a younger age, and then as we get older we kind of get harder and a little bit more dug into our ways, and we start to think, I actually want to just live my life, leave me alone, government, I want to do things my way, and I don't really see why those people over there should have that when I only have this, and it tends to just gravitate towards that. So this is why it's also important to note that when I say that, it's because I'm here in Norway. I think that if I were to be in the States again, I'd still be pretty left. Really, like it's not like I'm gonna like any like that. I don't want to get into like the political brass tacks of that. But I think to answer your question, I think that it's a divergence, but it's probably generational, partly, And but the large part of it, I would guess, is actually a personal thing where there's just like a certain hope for the future, kind of like outreaching mentality rather than a clenching in kind of cross your arms mentality. That's my interpretation, at least.
I'm definitely in a phase of my life where I'm reaching out. I mentioned briefly losing my son to a heroin overdose. That has been a key, of course, a key occurrence in my life, but it's been key to my focus on openness and curiosity. Because I can tell you briefly, the reason for me doing this show is, of course, losing my son like that. I was, just totally depressed. It just knocked me out of life. It knocked me out of just about anything productive and meaningful, as far as doing any work, doing anything. My social life just gone. And my wife, my son was from my first marriage, but my current wife knew my son very, very well. He would stay with us, after we were married. He would stay with us when I had him on those weekends that were so few and far between.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah. Hello, USA divorce law. But she knew him, of course, and of course she was hurt with his passing as well. But she saw how bad off I was, and she told me, John, you need to get out there and find a new inspiration, find a new motivation, and you should use your voice. You should literally use your voice, she told me. So here I am on this podcast, and I bring on people who are interesting to me, people who can motivate me, inspire me in some way, teach me something in some way. So it's propelled me into this therapeutic process, which is my show, talking to people and learning more. And in the course of that, it's really opened my eyes to the wealth of knowledge that is out there. I learned so much from talking with different people, regardless of their political leanings, regardless of if they're socially conservative or socially liberal. It's just this wealth of information, and I can filter it. If I don't like it, I'll never apply it to my life, but I still learned it. I still heard it from somebody. I still had it in that context of that person's experience, and that pushes me on. That lifts me up. That gives me something else to put in that little backpack I have of life experience. And does that make me more optimistic? I think so.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think that it's really leaned you in the direction of what I'm describing, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds pretty on the nose.
Exactly. So, people's politics, people's social beliefs are very much a direct reflection of what has happened to them in their life. Something happens, they interpret it and apply it to their life, and that changes or enhances the way they think.
Yeah, unless you ask a professional politician, then in that case, I don't know, not so much. Then it's a business.
Well, I think I think it's very few and far between a politician who really believes in their own political stance. They're always looking, not always, but so often they're just looking at the financial benefits, or they're looking for what kind of status will it bring them? Will this get me reelected so I can continue with this status of congressman or senator or, Statsminister, whatever it may be. Yeah. There's so little genuine, heartfelt belief in what they're doing.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. And Norway is no better than, it's a shit show in America, but Norway is no better. It's just a little quieter and on a smaller scale.
It's a different version. You talk about you're talking about funding elder stuff. We had a lot of focus on healthcare, but like you said, with fire and police, for example, they could really use a leg up, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm not it's coming from the States and being like a long hair, head. I'm not really a fan of the police. But then you come over here and it's different. I almost feel bad for them. It's you can't even do your fucking job, and it's not your fault.
You nailed it. You nailed it. They cannot do their job. They are so limited. with what they can do, and that goes to the detriment of society. I don't feel protected here in Norway. You kind of touched on it, and I say this all the time, and you kind of touched on it as well. There is a lot of crime in Norway, but there's a lot of crime that is undiscovered simply because there are so few police, first of all, and second of all, the police that are here, they just don't have the time or the resources to back them up so that they can do that job, which would kind of clean a few things up in society that would be to the betterment of this Norwegian society.
If only.
So I don't feel more protected here in Norway than I did back home. Absolutely not.
Yeah, which is a common misconception, I would imagine.
Yes.
Like the protections that you're afforded here are all theoretical. Like they're just on paper.
Yeah.
It's not like I feel particularly safe with like what is essentially like a private military in the various police states of the U.S.
That's not good. That's not good. That's swung too far in the wrong direction.
Yeah. But I feel like there's a middle ground somewhere.
There's a middle ground somewhere. It's not in Norway though.
No, it probably starts with spending a little bit more of the oil money.
Yeah.
That'd be my first guess.
Well, it's about hiring more police officers. At the moment, I believe there's about 500 educated police officers straight out of the police academy that don't have a job as a police officer. 500. What the heck is that? There's no. They have educated them, but there is no place for them to be a cop. That's crazy. That's nuts.
We need at least 500 more, I think.
Hello.
Yeah, it'd be a good idea to have more time for sure.
Absolutely.
Having an introductory hour is great. This has been a joy. Just having it's kind of like it's like a halfway ground between shoot the shit conversation at a party, while also allowing politics and religion to enter the conversation in a safe capacity. So it's good.
And that's the whole point of my show, regardless of the length of the conversation, is to just have a conversation, This has been an hour and 20 minutes. We could have been sitting at a party somewhere with people doing what they do at parties, maybe music playing, but we sit there and have this very conversation for the last hour and 20 minutes. That is...
I'm that guy.
That's me too.
You probably see it on me. Like I can't escape the image. So
are you a musician?
No, I get that a lot, but I am not.
No.
I am not artistically inclined, but my wife, who is a musician, known to listeners of this show, I would imagine, is Steffi. She was on The Voice back in 2019 here in Norway, and she was a finalist. So,
what's her name?
Like Steffi Joe.
Of course. Wow, that's your wife?
Yes, that is my wife.
Wow.
We've known each other for a long time. Our story goes way back, and we've got a really deep and interesting connection. She'd be a great podcast host, a guest too as well. She's had a long life as well, just like me.
I'd love to talk with her.
But yeah, so she's a musician, and I mean like. Classical violinist back in the day when she was in high school. She was extremely talented, but now it's like she can't even pick up the violin in fear of like it's a whole thing. But me, musician, no. But my wife, who is definitely an accomplished musician, really appreciates my musical analysis, like my capacity for musical analysis and artistic analysis in general. That's something I really pride myself on, is music especially, but I also like two-dimensional media, like painting and drawing, but especially paintings. So I'm not an artistic person myself, but I'm a very analytical person, and I like to apply it to art.
Well, I would love to talk with your wife. As a musician myself, and she was on The Voice, of course. Wow, I would love to talk with her. So we have to make that happen.
I am positive. We're going to be reunited here on Friday. I'm taking a flight back up to Lofoten, up to the beautiful island kingdom, and gonna collect her and our two babies, Nuna and Fox, throw them in their car seats right after the moving truck on Tuesday next week, and then we're gonna make the drive back down here.
Nuna and Fox, those are some beautiful names.
Thank you.
I love it.
It took a while. Nuna was dropped out of the sky because we were actually shopping around for strollers, and there's a brand that does like strollers and car seats and stuff called Nuna. And we're just like, we saw it, and we're just like, I know this is really, really cringe. Like it's awful. We shouldn't do this, but why is that name so good? And it just stuck. We couldn't escape it. We couldn't think of anything better, and it stick. It works for her if you meet her. And then Fox, he was a tough one, man. It was eventually left up to me just to pick, and I was like, you know what name really hits. It's like, is that like, this is maybe, I know you say that like language is open, everything is a little crass, but the first thing that came to mind, I'm like, man, Fox Rogers, that dude fucks. Like that's no joke, so I felt like that, like I want to have a Fox Rogers.
There you go. I love it. Well, listen, Kyle, I knew I was going to enjoy this. I didn't know we were going to get, we didn't really get into anything deep, but we were on the edges of some deep things. And I know that setting aside a couple hours at least will be very, very fruitful. So I want to have you come back.
I appreciate that. Can I just say that I appreciate that as a compliment. I've always prided myself on my conversational skills.
Yes.
And I really enjoy a good conversation, and it's so
well, I hope you have
rewarding.
One here today.
I have. Thank you very much for having me and for having one with me. It's always so rewarding to hear a good conversation, like in another podcast, a conversational podcast, like Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, like that type of formula is what I usually gravitate towards. Yeah. So this has been such a delight. Like it's so like right in the slot for exactly what I was like, man, I wish I could be on a show like that and talk to someone who asks good questions. It's like, it seems like such a lot of fun, and it really has been. And I so appreciate your feedback immediately. You want to have me back? I am down, man.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, man. John. Well, and I'll tell you this is what my show is all about. This stuff right here. This is day one of our friendship. So let's keep it moving.
Thank you.
Let's
I don't have a lot of friends. I have a tough time making friends. A lot of times because of the way my conversations tend to go. To be honest with you, I think my honesty, my poignancy, and my direct nature tends to be off-putting.
But I like that. That can be a pleasant, a wanted challenge in a conversation, and I like that.
I'm glad, because it's not everyone that's up to that challenge.
Yeah, no, I love it. Sometimes it's fun. Today we've kind of been on the surface, getting to and it was a fun conversation. But, the next time, I hope you can say some things that maybe I'll disagree with. I want to yeah, you know what I mean? And it's, to me, that is, it's an exercise that is not taken up often enough in life, conversation, because you never know what you're going to get.
I can't agree more. Like I could not agree more with you. That's it's so nice and refreshing to be able to. This is like it's like the best therapy I've had in years.
Well, there you go. And I told you, this is therapeutic. So,
hey man, I am welcome. I am welcome back for my next appointment. I couldn't say, I could not express to you how glad I am to have the invitation.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Yeah, well, it's an open door. Now we're friends. You're always welcome on my show. If you have anything that you would like people to hear, if you have anything you want to promote or anything you want to talk, you have an open door on this program of mine. So, I'll
cook up a plug for next time.
There you go. That's Kyle Rogers, everybody, another American in Norway. The guy's got a brain on him. You can hear it. You can see it. This is the kind of conversation that I love to have on my show, meaningful. We didn't get too deep today, but we did get meaningful. And I got a new brother, Brother Kyle. Remember, go everybody to my website, johnallenpod.com. That's where you're going to find all the work that I do. You will find my audio book there. If you like my voice, go there because it's me reading my audio book to you. It's my voice telling my story, johnallenpod.com. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. Remember, you can watch on YouTube and you can listen on all podcast platforms. And lastly, remember, there's a lot of beauty out there in the world, okay? Go out there, love and be loved, and enjoy the process. Bye, everybody.